lovely lunch and welcome back to this afternoon's session of IRENA Innovation Week. This afternoon we're going to focus on power systems of the future, infrastructure requirements for widespread electrification. Now, there's going to be 3 keynote speeches and then a panel discussion. For the panel discussion, if you have questions that you want to ask, just use the QR code, you'll get Slido. It's browser only, you simply log on. If you select the forum, which is this room, then you can put questions forward for the panelists. As I say again, it's not for the keynote speakers, it's for the panelists, but I thought you should know now. So what we're going to be doing this afternoon, this session is actually being held in partnership with the China Electric Power Research Institute, known as CEPRI. We're going to be looking at direct electrification of end-use sectors. What sort of impact is that going to have on power systems? One of the things we need to know is how innovation in electrification can actually affect the decarbonisation of end use. How can we make the most of existing infrastructure? What new types of infrastructure are we going to need? What sort of levels of investment are we going to need? How are we going to scale it? So this afternoon we're lucky enough to have a high-level welcome to this session from Dr. Huafeng, Chairman of CEPRI and Director of the National Centre for High Voltage Measurement. He's had multiple senior roles responsible for aviation, the grid, and all sorts of electrification. I'd like to invite Dr. Yen to come up to the stage. He's going to give his speech in Chinese, and his translator will give the speech in English.
尊敬的IRENA副总干事高丽辛格女士，欧洲电力工业联盟秘书长卢比先生，尊敬的费丽莎女士， IITC 各位朋友，与会的各位专家学者和代表，女士们、先生们，下午好。Guten Tag.
Respectable Deputy Director General Gauri Singh and Secretary General Christine Ruby and the Moderator Felicia, as well as experts, scholars, and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
我是中国电科院袁华峰，今天我们非常荣幸与 IITC 联合举办这次未来电力系统分论坛。
I am Yan Huafeng, President of CEPRI, China Electric Power Research Institute. Today, we are very honored to co-organize this session on power systems of the future with IITC.
积极应对气候变化，推动绿色低碳发展，加快推动以清洁能源为主导、以电力为中心的能源转型，在全球范围内形成了越来越多的共识。
A growing consensus has been formed worldwide on accelerating the electricity-centered energy transition with clean energy as the main energy carrier to tackle climate change and promote green and low-carbon development.
为推动能源转型，中国政府提出加快构建清洁低碳、安全充裕、经济高效、供需协同、灵活智能的新型电力系统。我们力争于2030年前达到碳达峰，2060年前实现碳中和。
To accelerate energy transition, the Chinese government proposed to build a new type of power system that is clean, low carbon, safe, affluent, economical, efficient, flexible, intelligent, and coordinating supply and demand, and set climate goals of achieving carbon peak by 2030 and carbon neutral by 2060.
推进全球能源转型是一项艰巨而具有挑战的任务。新型电力系统的构建和广泛电气化是实现能源转型的重要路径，需要加强全球能源转型发展和合作，大力推进技术创新协作，形成协调统一的标准规范和有效的示范支撑。上午卡梅拉先生和罗兰先生也都集中的提到了这一点，并提出了要加快协同。
The building of new type of power systems and the widespread electrification are important pathways for energy transition. To this end, we need to strengthen collaboration on global energy transition development, promote technology innovation, harmonize technical standards and protocols, and provide effective demonstration support. In this morning, both Director General Camera and IITC Director Dr. Roland Roche both expressed their perspective of calling on the core to speed up the global energy transition.
中国电科院作为中国电力行业历史最悠久已经72年综合实力最强的科研机构，重点在电网共性关键的应用技术以及基础性、前瞻性、战略性研究以及咨询服务、实验检测，特别是技术标准制定这些方面开展工作，为能源转型提供新型电力系统解决方案。
CEPRI has a history of 72 years. As the oldest and most comprehensive research institution in China's power industry, CEPRI focuses on doing research on common key application technology of power grids and doing basic, forward-looking, and strategic research, offering consulting services, tests and inspection services, and in particular, developing technical standards. Our mission is to provide new type of power system solutions for energy transition.
IITC 在世界低碳能源转型中发挥着重要作用。中国电科院很高兴能与 IITC 再次合作，共同举办今天这次分论坛，一起贡献我们的经验和价值。
IITC plays a very important role in promoting world low-carbon energy transition. CEPRI is very pleased to work with IITC again to co-organize this session and contribute our experience and value.
我们非常期待今天与会的诸位专家在此次分论坛上就未来电力系统的典型案例、发展趋势、形态特征带来精彩的分享、精彩的经验和一些鲜明的观点，为科学合理制定碳目标贡献智慧和力量。
Dear experts present in this session, we are very looking forward to your insightful views and experience on typical cases, development trends, and characteristics of future power systems, which we believe will contribute our wisdom and strength to helping the governments from different nations carefully plan for appropriate climate goals.
最后再次感谢各位专家应邀前来，也祝愿这次分论坛圆满成功。谢谢大家，Danke。
On this occasion, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to all participants present for this session. Last but not least, I wish this session a great success. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Asami Miketa to come up to the platform. She's the Head of Transition Planning and Power Sector Transformation at IRENA, And she's got extensive experience in doing exactly what we're talking about this afternoon, supporting member countries in developing long-term energy strategies with renewable energy. Miketa.
Smart electrification. That is the key to infrastructure planning. At IRENA, we have been investigating the critical interface between renewable energy and infrastructure planning. Smart electrification combines innovation and smart infrastructure strategies, and it requires designing the new ways of using renewables and together with a holistic set of innovations, which we call systemic innovation. It is my great pleasure today to share with you some of the selected insights from our latest Innovation Landscape Report. So let me start with first putting the electrification into the context of energy transition. The primary driver for energy transition is the low-cost renewable power. As we all know, wind and solar has now become one of the cheapest sources of generation in many parts of the world. Another important trend is innovation. As we have heard this morning, digitalization in particular has standing out as one of the most influential social trends with significant impacts on energy sector. And another important driver is, of course, the urgent need to decarbonize energy sector. The world had agreed on climate targets that limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. And then the energy supply, security and affordability. That has been always an important element of energy policy. But with the recent circumstances of geopolitical situation, decreasing the dependency on imported fossil fuel has even become a more important driver in many countries. Reflecting these drivers, IRENA's vision for 2050 has been proposed in our World Energy Transition Outlook as 1.5 degree scenario. And this figure here shows how the energy demand is met in 2050 in our scenario. And I would like to highlight here that under this scenario, 51% of final energy consumption is met by electricity through direct electrification, and 14% is met by hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives through indirect electrification. And this is a strategy that allows us to make most out of the affordable renewable power. And then in order to achieve this vision, we need to massively scale up the generation from renewable energy. And according to our scenario, 10 times more by 2050. This massive electrification occurs across all different kinds of end-use sectors, but especially to meet the needs of heat and cooling demand in buildings and industry sectors, and also road transport demand in transport sector. With this electrification, the fossil fuel that has been used in these sectors will be increasingly replaced by electricity. When direct electrification is not possible or difficult, then we can take indirect electrification pathways, using the hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives produced using the electricity. So here we have drawn different pathways of electrification. But as you can see, whichever pathway we take, we need to massively scale up the renewable generation. But it is not just generation. We need to also scale up infrastructure that transport, that convert, that store renewable energy. And according to our scenario, investing into these supporting infrastructure would cost as much as investing into generation assets. The smart electrification is the key for optimizing optimal infrastructure planning. We have drawn key strategies for smart electrification in our joint study with State Grid Corporation. And I'm very happy to announce that the Chinese translated version of this report will be released later today. The first pillar of the strategy is to manage the new demand in an intelligent way, meaning that demand needs to be better aligned with the supply of the production pattern of renewable energy, and also to control or reduce the daily peak demand or seasonal peak demand. The second pillar of strategy is to create flexibility in the power system. And this is to bring down the cost and also potential bottlenecks related to the operation of power system with high share of renewable energy. And lastly, the strategic siting of industrial demand and hydrogen production center would allow us to minimize certain infrastructure investment by siting them near the production site of renewable energy. So the smart electrification strategy is the most cost-effective way to decarbonize the end-use sectors. But what enables the smart electrification strategy? That is innovation. In our innovation landscape report that we launched this year in June, we have identified 100 individual innovations that enables smart electrification strategies. And these innovations are presented for the power to mobility, power to heat and cooling, and power to hydrogen. And we are presenting these innovations as a toolbox from which policymakers can choose based on their specific and unique geographical, social, and resource circumstances. And this is because there's no one-size-fits-all solution, as we have discussed this morning. Finally, I would like to mention that our concept of innovation goes beyond technologies. It encompasses also innovations in market design and regulation, innovations in system planning and operation, also innovations in business models. For example, out of 100 innovations that we have identified, 34 are under the technology and infrastructure, but all the rest are non-technology-based innovation. And here I would like to give a very brief glimpse of the innovation toolbox. This is an example from the Power to Mobility Toolbox. Here we have identified 35 innovations that goes across the 4 dimensions of innovation that I have talked about. And each innovation is accompanied by an example from real-world application. To conclude my presentation, I would like to stress the importance of looking at innovations in a holistic way in order to enable the smart electrification strategies. We call this approach systemic innovation. It is about finding the synergies among individual innovations and also across 4 dimensions of systemic innovation. And it is only by cultivating and embracing these synergies we can unlock the potential, full potential of smart electrification strategy and realize its transformative impacts on clean energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Asami. Could I invite Mr. Boli to come up to the stage? Mr. Boli is Director of International Affairs at CEPRI, and he's going to be presenting on the challenges and key technologies of new types of power systems, sharing the experience of China.
Yes, thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here, and I think it's a very good opportunity to share some opinions on the power system, on the energy transition. So, first of all, I'd like to introduce to say something about what the challenges we face. To tackle climate change, global energy transition tends to be oriented towards green growth and low carbon development. So it was proposed to build a new type of power system, NTPS, based on renewable energy RE in 2021, aiming to ensure the energy security. NTPS will be considered on the construction of a power supply and the consumption system with high proportion of renewable energy integration. So building NTPS is considered to be a very important approach to develop non-fossil energy. So here you can see some values. And so what's the challenge we are facing? The fundamental change of main power resources will bring a lot of huge challenge on the power system. First, strong randomness and fluctuation of wind and PV outputs and increasing peak loads challenge the real-time balancing of source and load. Second, due to the weak support of RE for system frequency and voltage, system security and stability risks will increase significantly when RE penetration reaches a certain level. In addition, other industries will maybe transfer the carbon emission pressure to power industry through electrification in future. Negative carbon technologies such as CCQS are required for carbon neutral. RE-based hydrogen production technology will be promoted. So next, I'd like to give some description of the characters and practice use case. So facing this kind of so much big challenges, what the NTPS should be and will be. So I'll give some maybe prediction. So the NTPS will be clean and low carbon with the balance between production and consumption. that's various production. It will be opened into active with the coordination of multi-link elements. Coexistence of multiform grids, not only the decentralized, but also the centralized grids. The multi-level system coordination into a connection of multiple energy systems. It will be safe and controllable. That means not only the elements, but also the whole system would be visible, measurable, and controllable with enhanced power system resilience. And it will be smart and friendly with digitalization technology, intelligent AI technology, and networking technology use. And it will be flexible and efficient. Everybody talk about the smart energy, demand, response, management, these kind of things. So such a NTPS will strongly support energy transition and climate goals with profound new changes to generation mix, load characteristics, grid structure, technical foundation, and optional features. So next, I'd like to give some use case, some practice from CEPRI, from IGCC. The first one, for the use of RE, the forecasting is very important. So CEPRI has developed a customized numeric weather prediction system for electric power meteorology. And we have already established the user-oriented centralized forecasting and distribution mechanism. VSC, HVDC, and flexible low-frequency transmission technology has been developed, and the demonstration projects have been put into operation in China successfully. Some experts already mentioned the bulk transfer power. So we SGC have already built a very huge UTV transmission grids with almost 40 UTDC and AC projects. With only one 1100 kV UTDC transmission lines, we can transfer 12 gigawatt power over 3,300 kilometers. Besides, in China, we have a lot of areas, for example, deserts, gobi, and sand areas, with abundant wind and PV energy. We have made plans with very huge installed capacity for this area for renewable. And by the end of last year, we have already 13 million new energy vehicles in China, and most of them are EVs. In these numbers, IGC gave a great contribution for that. And regarding the energy storage, new type of energy storage has been developed at a very high speed. You can see the picture. And another very important practice is about, just as the lady said, tours, this kind of things. So I think it's very important. We already, ITC already released a series reports regarding the construction of NTPS. We can show you the two keys. The grid codes for renewable powered system, the innovation landscape for smart electrification, and we CEPRI are happy. We're very happy to make contribution for both of that. I do think this kind of toolbox, this kind of guidelines are very important because they are not only informative but also interactive for the future construction of power system. So at last, maybe actually in this morning's session, we have got a lot of keywords, and I can show you challenges, innovations, solutions, action, and rules. So we face a lot of challenges, not only in generation, new resources, but also for the grids, the demand side, the loads, the storage. We need to set up a lot of very key technologies. I think for these kind of things cannot be carried out, cannot be fulfilled by only one utility, one entity, one society, organization, or even one country. It needs collaboration for all the parts, all the world. So I do think ITC arena gave us a very platform. And at last, I'd like to say again on behalf of our chairman, Dr. Huafeng, we CEPRI already made contribution for that, and we are glad to give more contribution for the future. So you are welcome for the cooperation with us. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to invite to join us on the stage Norela Constantinescu, who's the head of innovation at ENTSO-E. She's the head of innovation there at the European Network of Transmission System Operators. That means she represents 39 electricity transmission system operators from 35 countries across Europe. And Norela's actually going to talk about the impact on the electrification of end users on the TSOs.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to IRENA for this invitation to this session dedicated to future of power systems and to this day oriented towards the direct electrification. I would like to start by showing this time the European dimension, at least those which are seen from transmission system operators for electricity perspective across Europe. And similarly to the previous presentations, you see that also in Europe we have a big challenge. 10 times more renewables in solar, in wind, offshore and onshore, in comparison to today's capacities by 2050 according to our distributed energy scenarios. We also saw that actually the renewables have to be combined in order to achieve efficiency with the electrification. The first sector which will come across will be transport, heating and cooling. And there you see that by 2050 we will have more than doubling of the total final electricity consumption if we take also into account, in addition to the electrification of transport and heating and cooling, the electricity which will be used by electrolyzers directly connected to the grid or outside the grid. What I would like to mention is, and it was also said before, is the system perspective, which is equally important to the technology and solution perspective and complements that perspective. We will need vast volumes of flexibilities, new flexibilities than we have today, and we will need also the grid reinforcement and expansion to match these two pillars of the energy transition. This will mean increased cooperation among the countries, so infrastructure connects, and we will need also the integration among the sectors. And of course, what was mentioned here today, a lot of innovative solutions, mature ones, which has to be used and deployed. And I will try to focus my intervention by taking as reference, actually, the report of IRENA on 100 innovations, and by looking in 3 sectors. The first one will be electromobility and electrification of transport sector. For the first decade, so up to 2030, we see in Europe, we will see a fast acceleration of use of electromobility driven by the passenger cars. And the system needs to cope with this pace of development. You see here that actually in terms of electromobility, probably for the European system, we will not have such much the problem of the energy, but we will have the problem of the capacity due to power peaks if we don't have smart charging and afterwards vehicle-to-grid solutions. We also looked into more detailed sector of heavy-duty vehicles. And here the distinction was made between public, local, regional transport, where we see mostly the use of batteries as technology to come up to 2030 because the maturity of this technology. Also actually requiring attention to the peak power loads. Here, probably the charging will be done in depots and therefore helping the electricity system. For the long-haul transport, there the strategy probably is still a little bit more uncertain. However, we will need these charging infrastructures across the roads and across the highways of Europe, where hyperchargers with capacities over 10 megawatts should be put in place. We looked at our members, so I will give just 2 examples from Slovenia, LS, and from Portugal, REN, which are actually looking on how to integrate these developments. One, by using the holistic approach and by using new technologies from the point of view of digitalization. So, for example, artificial intelligence in the case of Slovenia for making the planning together with the transport sector, and the modular approach in Portugal. So I would say that while we have to look at the consumer needs, we need to create this ecosystem which will allow the coordinated planning in order to cope with loads and its profiles. In terms of grid operation, we have to look at this weather dependency generation, which is going to come, and the power peaks. In terms of system operation, we will need flexibility requirements to be fulfilled, and of course, a regulatory framework and a market design which takes into account these developments. And I will also underline, as I think in the morning the Commissioner Simpson was mentioning, this cannot be done without digitalization. The next sector I would like to talk about is heating and cooling, which comes with the flexibility potential, but also with some challenges to be overcome. Of course, private cars are individual decisions, can be really fast deployed. Of course, we still need to develop the charging infrastructure. In the case of heating and cooling, this is a decision which maybe it's more difficult to be taken. They are having a lot of potential in terms of flexibility services which can be provided to the power grid, but also certain barriers which have to be overcome. The development will be driven, of course, by the deployment of heat pumps, mainly. And in terms of barriers, the upfront costs we have to look upon, the differences between the regulatory markets, the heating and also electricity. Of course, the new devices have can be foreseen with the equipment which will allow actually the provision of flexibility services, but for the existing ones which are already deployed, so there is strategies for retrofitting. And then, of course, we start in Europe from different points. For example, France and Norway, they have electrified their heating system back in 70s, so therefore their network is much stronger than in other countries where this was not done. So here again, a multi-sector coordination with system operators, aggregators, also I think it was mentioned in the morning, district heating and cooling is needed. And last sector I would like to touch upon, it's of course hydrogen. And here for us, it's a question of what we called the long duration flexibility. So the first two sectors can cover very well the short duration flexibility. Hydrogen can cover next to the hydro pump storage, the long duration flexibility which we need when we do not have wind blowing and solar shining. We looked at potential services, frequency and ancillary services, congestion management. Yes, these technologies can provide this type of services, but also it is important, the storage solution. What we see that by 2030, the existing use cases, so the use of what the industry needs will be the driving force, while the system services will just stack on the value. Afterwards, a lot of investments are needed across and an integrated system view. I will conclude by summarizing. So the future power system will need flexibility sources, short-term and long-duration flexibility. We will need as well the extension and the reinforcement of the grid. And this will require regulatory framework which will allow the timely development and encourage efficiency and innovation. We will need also to operate the system in a different way with TSOs and also distribution system operators being well aligned, across TSO having a cross-country dimension, but also across the sectors. These are millions of assets which have to be connected, and therefore automation is important. And what was mentioned before, so all these capabilities coming from inverter-based assets. And last but not least, I will mention the market design, a key enabler, which actually allocate value where and when it's needed for the energy system, but taking into account the different consumer needs. I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Kristian Ruby, who's the Secretary General of Eurelectric, to come up to the stage. He's going to be moderating our next discussion, which is actually going to bring together a number of the different actors that form the power system. We need to actually think and talk about the impact of the electrification of end-use sectors. What's it actually going to take to get it done? So, Kristian.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation and the possibility to speak here today, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President. So let me, without further ado, get the panelists up here on stage so that we can start the discussion. And I would like to invite Mr. Luis Cunha, who is the board member and member of the board of the DSO entity also. So please come up on the stage here. We have the president of CEER, Dr. Annegret Groebel. Please come on the stage. We have Dr. Wenpeng Luan, who is advisory expert from CEPRI. We have Dr. Ninghong Sun, who is the team lead of system planning at TransnetBW. And we have Sylvie Tarnai, who is chief strategy officer at EnergyPool. Please give all the participants a warm welcome.
if you follow your, I don't know.
Take the order, I don't know.
Right. You're all sitting down well and comfortable. So let's start off with a little round of introductory remarks. I know that you, Mr. Cunha, you have a few slides you'd like to show us. I just urge you all to be fairly short in your introductory remarks. It's more interesting when we get into the discussion. Also, I should mention to the participants here, we have the app that you can use. We have the Slido, and that means that questions you may bring to my attention could be included into the discussion. So, but first over to the participants, and let's start with you, Mr. Cunha.
First, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you to Irene for the invitation. I think it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very glad that I'm able to join my views also on this topic, also the views of the ESO, I hope. So, I committed a mistake, so basically I have a presentation. I don't know if it's possible to have it there. Okay, thank you. If you can move to the next slide. Basically, I think it will be much more easier for me to convey the message if I have this presentation, because I realize that we have been discussing during the last, I don't know, how many, 20, 25 years, this issue of postponing investments, defer. So to defer is mostly the verb that is not there, but is behind all the discussions. How can we avoid more investments in the network, not to have the tariffs increasing a lot and provide welfare to society? And I decided also to coin my own version of defer, and this is the reason why I bring this slide with me. So basically I see this on two perspectives. I think we have reactive investments and proactive investments. I think now at European level we are calling these anticipatory investments. And basically if you compare the characteristics of one and the other, you will see that there is a huge difference. When we react, we are always committing some errors because we are only trying to solve a problem on an ad hoc basis. If we do it in a planning way, if we have a long-term vision of the problems, if we plan to achieve the goals of the long-term vision and do it by planning the mid and short-term implementation, I think we are more prone to achieve the goals. And this is exactly what I'm trying to bring here. So basically I define this in an equation, which is the energy transition equals R plus P. Our idea is to bring R, reactive investment, down and to bring forward the proactive investment. Proactive investment means investment now to save in the future. So basically, this is the message that I want to convey with this slide. If you don't matter to move to the next one, please. Okay, basically a few figures. I'm not going through the figures, but just to let you know what I understand by defer. Defer means, first of all, as the Commissioner said this morning, to digitalize. Digitalize the kind of infrastructure to our change. So I think the numbers are already there. We have the digitalization of energy action plan that brings us some lights on the topics, on the figures. So we know that we need to invest in digitalizing the grids. This is the first topic. The second one is to enhance. I think this is one of the most issues that we have been dealing with. So how to make sure that we can get the most out of the existing grids. And for that we need to digitalize, to know what we are operating, how to measure, how to control. And then we have the third one, which is about flexibility, the one that we have been dealing with today. And let me just share with you my view on this. I think we have enough capacity that will be available there to solve the needs. The point here is that, according to some studies, there is also the best level for flexibility. So we cannot think that flexibility will solve all the problems. Flexibility will be there to solve a certain amount of problems, but then we need to do something more. And then is where it comes the expansion of the grid, the investment on new assets, the upgrading of the access. And finally, we have to take care of the existing assets. And most of the assets, in our case in Portugal, we are more or less 37-year-olds, the assets, but we will arrive 40 years easily by 2030. So basically this is a toolbox. Defer is about a toolbox of different things that we need to do in combination according to each concrete situation in order to solve our problem. So my last slide, please, and I end with this. So it's just this message. So we have two roads. I think we should not choose the easiest way, but the one that is going really to make us go forward with the energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you. So toolbox, yes, give him a proper hand. Yeah. I like your distinction between reactive and proactive investments. We have a big discussion, and I'm sure we'll hear more in a second about this concept of anticipatory investments. We know the future is coming. We know millions of cars are coming, millions of heat pumps. Now, how do we allow and empower the grid operators to make those necessary investments? I would like to jump to you, Dr. Sun. In TransnetBW, you did a big study back in 2021 looking into some of these things. Could you give us a bit of a sneak peek, if you will, on what was in that study? What did you find?
Sure. Actually, we have published this study in the last year, that study Energy System 2050 towards a decarbonized Europe. And in this study, our major objective was to conduct a system of full climate neutral Europe by 2015. We know there is definitely not only a single pathway to achieve these climate targets, and we were aware of quite the numerous uncertainties we couldn't investigate exactly in our study. But we believe electricity and hydrogen would be the key energy carrier on the way to a efficient and sustainable system. And in our study, we considered two scenarios with their targets we have to achieve by 2050. And we used a detailed model to compare two cost-optimal pathways to fulfill these targets. And in the first one, we consider a global market, which means gas can be imported outside Europe. And in the second one, we built up more energy resilient Europe. We found actually some interesting points. The energy transition is a big challenge. We heard today several times, but it is also a great chance for Europe to become more and more independent from the energy imports. In the whole EU, we will need, in a decarbonized Europe, up to 4,000 gigawatt installed capacity, mostly from wind and solar. And we have to begin to build this capacity today. And our coordinated electricity and gas infrastructure are the backbone of this energy transition. And what we see in different development plans that is far away from the requirement we need for decarbonized Europe. And that is not only a national task, but a European and even a worldwide mission. That's why TransnetBW didn't only see the control area of its own, but analyzed the whole European system. And the flexibility in the demand is very important for the future. We have found out electricity must be understood in a new way. What we did in the past was to generate electricity as much as we need. And in the future, our electricity demand will double, and the peak load will even triple. And the system would be unaffordable if we will cover this demand without totally rethinking the supply system. So the electricity demand must be flexible, and it must be able to meet the generation. And an additional point is the system security. It's becoming a more and more serious issue. And we need other capacities to keep the grid secure and stable. And we have seen in our study that the imbalances both in the active and the reactive power is an issue we have to deal with in the future. So I think these findings are not only valid to German or European system, but it could be a very interesting aspect for other systems in the world which is making their efforts to achieve an efficient and sustainable system.
Thank you very much. Did I hear you right saying 4,000 gigawatts of capacity by 2050, that is?
In our climate neutral Europe.
So an immense increase in the needed capacity, a corresponding, if somewhat smaller, increase in the generation. That can only work if we think of demand as much more flexible and build out the necessary infrastructure. So I'd like to jump back here to you, Dr. Luan. We heard some similar trends from your colleague, but could you tell us, do those proportions resonate with you, looking with your experience from the Chinese energy system? Are we talking about similar dimensions to the challenge? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely it is. Yeah. So for last 2 decades, China actually is China EPRI US a lot on the try to harden the transmission network. The what famous is the super high voltage network actually connected all China's network together. And from last 7 or 8 years, SGCC actually started to US a lot on the distribution side. A big project we did is called the Distribution Internet of Things, kind of a technology initiative we started 7 years ago, just try to deploy some measure and control technologies for every distributed transformers. Target 5 million distributed transformers around the service territory of SGCC. Try to leverage the technology to handle the risk for distributed generation connections. For last several years, because of technology innovation in the solar side, so a lot of areas in China, we got almost 30% of the housing is solar feedback to the grid. In the peak of the time, is 30% feedback to the network. It causes a lot of problem. So we need to use the technologies actually try to handle the risk. And certainly there are some other technology as well, like energy storage, and SGCC try to build every site possible for the pump storage. If they found a site possible to do that, they will do it. Otherwise, we encourage people to use some distributed generations or renewables, and also the energy storage to participate in the market. Yeah. I believe this is a huge path if it goes to same way, and the challenge is the same as well. Yeah.
So you mentioned storage as one of those technologies that can help, let's say, flexibilize the future system and make it work. What other technologies could we be talking about that could help do this job?
Another way actually is flexible customers load side demand response. Yeah, and so they're in a subcommittee in IEC. Actually, I'm chairing. It's decentralized electrical energy systems. So under TC8 of IEC. So we are got 23 participating members from different countries, and got 150 experts from worldwide. So we try to develop some standard for some technologies like microgrid and virtual power plant, demand side resource integration, and also DC and AC/DC hybrid distribution networks. And also we are doing some works on the multiple energy integrations. Yeah, we believe will help relieve these risks in electrical power industry. So all this customer side demand resources, if can be flexibly used, reasonable, it will, I think, will make a lot of changes, challenges, reduce the challenges to the market. Yeah.
Right. So demand response and technical standards to get the virtual power plant going, and similar demand side response technologies. Maybe that's a good segue to you, Ms. Tarnai. Explain us a little bit about what your company does.
Okay. Firstly, let me thank the IRENA warmly for inviting us here, and for letting a company which was a decade ago still a startup and which is now an SME active in demand side flexibility and aggregation to represent here the voice of demand side and consumers and what consumption side can also bring to the energy transition and integration of renewables. So thank you for inviting us today. So EnergyPool is a flexibility aggregator initially with a strong initial anchorage in France in the industry segment. So some might know that in France we have one of the biggest thermosensibility and peak issue in Europe. So it brought a framework of rules which allowed the development of demand response and aggregation for a decade, I would say. And so one of the key benefits that we have been delivering to the French system and the grids over the past 10 years was mainly the peak shaving use case with our pool of industrial consumers, which has now developed into a pool also encompassing some tertiary segments, battery storage, district heating and cooling, and now, of course, electrolyzers, electric vehicles, and so on. We have been developing internationally as well. We are present in Japan, in Turkey, and other European countries such as the Netherlands, where there are huge issues. And we are happy. I'm happy to bring a testimony here from the field. We have developed strong digital tools enabling us to monitor and to pilot distributed assets, be them in industries or other types of assets. Partnerships enabling us to also connect to some flexible devices. And we strongly believe that there are lots of potential which are unlocked, especially also in the industrial segment, but in other segments such as district heating and cooling and further on. Just maybe to reflect a bit on a comment which was made this morning from our Californian colleague as well. We also believe that there will be a change, or we are currently undergoing a change of paradigm from a world where, basically it was consumption driving production with mostly dispatchable assets that we had at hand. Now we're going to go into a world where production will also determine and should determine consumption partly. And we see today already that grids are sometimes also determining consumption. And it would be best that it is, so to say, managed efficiently and not, in French we say subi, or an intentional, so to say. So what we see is that today, the way the system works, based on the old paradigm, is not working. And what we could see over the past months also in Europe with negative prices on the markets or zero price and so on, is just a symptom of an old world recipe which doesn't work with the integration and massive integration of renewables. So it's mainly a system which shows that we can do some more efforts when possible to create some more elasticity on the demand side to also answer that, and that empowering consumers will be key to solve the issues that we currently have at hand. Electrification comes with greater challenges, and we spoke about it just earlier, higher peak loads as well that need to be managed and that we can manage through peak shaving, etc., but also great potentials of new flexibilities into the system.
I'd like to follow up on this, empowering the customers. This has been a refrain of the energy transition, especially in Europe, for a few years. When we talk about demand response, what does that mean exactly? What would it take for us to empower customers? What's needed from regulation? What's needed from the businesses to provide that empowerment to the customers?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because very often we focus on technological means, on digitalization, tools, etc. And I would like to say, I think there is a lot of technology already existing. There is a lot of digital tools already enabling lots of things. And it's further developing, and it will develop further with artificial intelligence and so on. I don't see the bottleneck being in the digital tools themselves, but it's much more, and that is the way I like as well the ARENA report, focusing also on innovation into the market design and business models, because that's what we, from our perspective, really see as key. We have been developing technologies. We are trying to provide it whenever possible. We are trying to work on being able to value the flexibility potentials also on consumption side, sometimes pooled with storage, which brings great potential. But currently we see real barriers. So we see that, firstly, we could have more voluntary demand response policies in a number of countries and member states, also in the EU, with more ambitious targets, and this could enable to decrease the investment in peak load capacities. So even in France, where we have a framework, and I mean, today there are about 4 gigawatts of demand response in the French system, we have a target of 6.5 by 2030, and we believe we could even do double that because the potential is there. So it's a matter of voluntary policy. Then we see that there is a huge lengthiness and lack of decision making also in some countries. So why in France there are still some mechanisms which are not open to consumption side or to industrials? Why can consumption and industry do some curtailment, but why are they not able to benefit to the grid and to the system by stimulating as well and provide some downward adjustments? Why is it not possible in Spain to aggregate demand side, while we know when you have aggregation of consumption, then you also might reduce the risk and you unlock more potential? Why is it that in Germany, the only mechanism that existed to incentivize load reduction was phased out last year, and currently there is still no regulation in place, while Germany is the country driving the energy transition with lots of renewables and is a huge industrial nation with potential from industry, and academic is working in that direction as well. And then we see as further levers the grid tariffs to have more create more incentives on grid tariffs. We see today that there are even counterproductive measures and rules in place, and we could play on those grid tariffs as well as last point, dynamic retail pricing, because we need to link more the long-term supply and contract, have innovation in contractual design to have a linkage between these long-term contracts and markets, but also short-term markets with some indexation to market prices in order to bring the right signals to consumers and to the demand side. In this old system, basically, we are not sending the right signals and incentives to demand.
Thank you. I can't fit more words here now, but I picked up some very good ones. Grid tariffs that need fixing in order for it to incentivize better. Clear signals to customers and retail pricing, dynamic retail pricing, opening up the balancing market, and those would be some of the ways to let's say incentivize DSR and empower customers, as we discussed. Dr. Groebel. We've heard a lot of big numbers today. I'm going to give you a few more. 50 million heat pumps on the European grid by 2030. That's the plan of Repower EU. 50 million electric cars. 600,000 megawatts of new renewables to be added to the grid by 2030, 70% of which will go to the distribution grids, or at least to the low and mid-voltage grids. That's roughly 400,000 megawatts. No matter how much DSR we invent in this world, in this period, we will need to talk about grid investments, and we've heard this from different angles here today. But first off, from your perspective, if we have a continuum ranging from a walk in the park to very steep mountain climbing, where are we with this 2030 challenge in Europe?
I would say in the middle. Yeah, because I think you have highlighted, and there were a lot of very good comments with which I agree, but I would also like to mention a few more words in terms of course, regulatory governance and how we can try to address the challenges that are ahead of all of us, the system challenges and also for consumers, of course. Let me try to pick up something that the second speaker today mentioned about a holistic approach. I very much agree with this. I think we need to tap into the various possibilities to integrate renewables, both on the transmission level as well as on the distribution level. And I think we should distinguish between those two, because I think there are a bit different problems here, and that also I hope you still can hear me. Thank you. That also involves, of course, both investment in the grid, but not only in the grid, but also flexibility and strengthening the demand side. Absolutely right. And these two have to go together. And of course, and that is something that I have not heard and that I would like to mention here, is that the increase of renewable generation and correspondingly grid investment, flexibility investment, storage investment, etc., need to be synchronized. I think that is the important part, and we have seen if this does not work here in Germany as an example, if this does not work, then you face bottlenecks, you face curtailments, you face extra costs, which we want to try to avoid. So I'm a bit hesitant to use the word anticipatory investments, because for me all investment is somehow anticipatory, and I think we should not run one before the other. So we need to synchronize the development in order, of course, to also, let's say, have a clearer basis for the investment and for, on the other side, the possibilities to use the existing grid efficiently, and also to look at alternative possibilities that can reduce investment. I'm not denying that additional investment is needed, but I think we should not focus only on the big numbers. Yeah? So trying to find a good balance here and synchronize the different types. Second, and that of course is speaking as an economic regulator, I think some of the, let's say, challenges and also of the regulatory tools and solutions do not change dramatically from what we face now, by which I mean we have to face this in, and there's still the need from the regulatory point of view to do this for the consumers in the most cost-effective and cost-efficient way that we can find. And I think that is something which we also need to bear into mind, and we are looking at whether and which adjustments in terms of network tariff structure, other regulatory tools, etc., are needed. If sometimes also regulation has to speed up and has to be more flexible in the way that we also allow the innovation to develop, for example, by regulatory sandboxes or other forms of dynamic regulation, which probably in the past was not there to the extent needed. So I take this point. Regulators are slow to adapt, but I think we got the message. And of course, regulation with incentive regulation, for example, need also to play their role to support the energy transition and to factor in the different new targets that we have in terms of sustainability. Last word, just a final sentence on the consumers. You know that the CER strategy, and I'm speaking here mainly with my head as CER president, is to place the consumer in the center, and I very much agree with empowering the consumer to benefit, to participate, and to benefit in the energy transition. This also requires certain preconditions to be met, like smart meters, etc., and of course smartening the DSO, the distribution system, so having local markets that allow to integrate renewables and more flexibility, so it's not only transmission but also this level, and here I think the regulators also can play an important part. But I just want also to mention with a bit of caution that it is difficult and we need to allow for adjustment timing for consumers, especially after the crisis. It is not easy now to explain that a consumer to invest and to sign up to a dynamic contract after the consumers have seen price increases, etc. Yeah, so just as a word of caution, I'm very much convinced that this is the way to go, but as a regulator, I also have to see that customers are different and that we have to take care also of those that might be more, let's say, sticky, yeah, and that no one is left behind. So we still have the affordability target, and that is important. I'm not saying that we should not see that there are possibilities, synergies to use, so to take them with us, the slower consumers, but we need to be aware of the fact that we have different needs here as well. Thanks.
Thank you. If you allow, let me challenge you a bit here, because I think we can all agree planning is absolutely critical, and we can all agree that storage investments need a massive boost as well. My question would be, however, I mean, we're looking really at an extremely limited amount of time that's left. Are we going to be anywhere close to meeting the network needs if we don't allow for anticipatory investments?
I think yes, because when we start now, I mean, we have always a long planning horizons. So I don't, as I said, I don't see a fundamental difference to the situation that we have. Yes, we know that there need to be investment, and we know that the grid has to be restructured and expanded, and that this takes time. But this is now the way to do it in parallel with the renewable generation.
Mr. Cunha, you requested the anticipatory investments just before. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah.
Is everything A-okay?
Yeah, I very much acknowledge that when we have these kind of discussions, I think we all agree we are all on the same page, but when it goes to the implementation, then things start to differ. I have this feeling that what happens with discussion at this level is that we really keep stuck to the main points. So I mean, integrating renewables. But whenever we say that we want to put customer at the center, I think we are not willing to really doing that. Let me just give you an explanation why I think we are not doing that. I think we really need DSOs, TSOs, regulators, whatever, vendors, solution providers. We all need to sit in the place of consumers and starting to organize our minds around that topic. We need to organize our system. We have been discussing a lot this top-down approach, this bulk generation, the way we match the generation with supply and so on and so forth. And I think now we need to do the other way around. We need to start designing our system from bottom to up. And why I say this, I think it was mentioned this morning that we need citizens to be more efficient in the way they use energy. Then we need people that start buying PV solar panels and driving electric cars to make the most out of it, to use their own energy to supply their own cars and to be self-balanced to the extent they can do it. Then we need communities to make sure that the surplus of energy is shared within the community. And only after that we have that surplus flowing to the networks. And if we organize the system in this kind of local balances and layered approach, I think we will naturally reduce costs and bring this energy transition much more cost efficient and cost effective. And I think it's really by having an open collaboration, having the capacity to not stay in silos and discussing this in an open way that we are going to achieve that. And let me just give you a clear example. We heard this morning from the person from the United States, California. They started implementation of the demand-side flexibility programs or demand-side management, whatever they called it, back in 2000, in the year 2000, after the crisis that they had at the time. And it was clear from his words that they are struggling to implement real programs around flexibility. And that happens in the United States, where we have integrated utilities. So we don't have this problem of unbundling. Not a problem, of course, when I say a problem from the perspective of flexibility. Because whenever you say, okay, let's put some signals on distribution tariffs, on transmission tariffs, so that we can drive consumer behavior, that for me is something that is not going to work. And basically because if you look to the amount the value that you pay for distribution tariffs in the final bill of a consumer, that is not enough to drive any kind of behavior. So in a market that is organized in the way we have organized our markets, I think there is only one solution, is to cooperate all together and to think how can we implement at a city level, at energy community level, these one-stop shops where people can know what is the benefit of putting a solar on the rooftop, what is the benefit of driving an electric car, how to combine all these things together, how to share energy within the community, and then also to understand the details of the problem. Because we need also to take care of our infrastructure, and our infrastructure has several limitations. And it's only by organizing all these issues together that we can overcome the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. A layered approach, I like that. And we heard also Mr. Boli talk about the coexistence of several grids that need to play together. We hear about the challenges of demand-side response and integrating, let's say, also the potential, thank you, the potential of the decentralized electric use technologies, electric cars, heat pumps. Can you give a perspective from China? Do you have good experience with this, or what's the experience up until now?
Sure. I think in China case, we just Mr. Rui said is in Europeans we got 30 million the target for the electric cars, and so in China actually by end of last month we already have 16.2 million electric cars, and only for the last 6 months in China we got 3.2 million electric cars sold in the market there. And but this period is the electric cars actually increase very fast because the technology actually gets matured much better, and also the infrastructure of charging infrastructure is very accessible in China. Most of the cases, yeah, compared to the several years ago. Now the charging capacity is everywhere, but we think but still it's a challenge because it's growing very fast, yeah. And we expect this situation will be developed very quickly in the future as well. So, but China planned a different regulatory point differently, yeah. But China planned already for the hardened distribution network everywhere, at least in the SGCC side. And we think the challenge can be handled, yeah. But we need to leverage different technologies like innovations, control, monitoring control, and also customer participation as well. So we also design some tariff as well, market-based tariff, just try to shift loading in different cases, yeah, and define the V2G technologies. And also we are doing quite a lot actually. We are standardize this communication and also this kind of different mechanism to make the electric vehicles can be dispatchable in some way, and not completely way, but in some way. Yeah, try to make the market and the power grid to harmonize together. Yeah, but I think it's doable. It's a challenge. The challenge is huge, but it's manageable at least in SGCC side this time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. In a second, we're going to turn to some of the questions from the audience, and I'm very happy to see that Anonymous has posed no less than 5 questions that we're going to turn to in a second. So thank you for that, Anonymous. First off, Dr. Sun, anticipatory investments, yes or no?
Yeah, I think it is a good question. Yes, we need investments. We need investment in decentralized flexibilities, and we need investment in the grid. They should be combined and synchronized with each other.
Okay, very clear. Thank you. So let's start from the top. If flexibility is so important, why is its remuneration still so low? Maybe Dr. Groebel, you want to give a comment here?
We are, I think, in the process of increasing possibilities for flexibility. We are not yet there, and so I guess once we have implemented new systems like what was mentioned, energy communities, etc., more aggregators, I would assume that then and dynamic pricing. Yeah, in a let's say way that also allows to tap into the consumer basis more, I would assume that the prices adjust accordingly.
Maybe one follow-up question, because we've now talked about dynamic pricing, but another thing that which is less price-driven, perhaps, or to a lesser extent at least, is the concept of flexible contracts, which also could help provide flexibility for DSOs. I know that CEER has been elaborating on that. Could you explain a little bit what is this concept and how would it help flexibility?
Yes, so that this is also from the DSO side, because dynamic pricing is mainly seen from the demand side, and flex contracts would try to have the concept a little bit more, let me call it symmetric in inverted commas, so that there can be, that the flexibility can be called upon from the DSO as well when needed, in a way what we had previously on the industrial scale, on the industry with the regulation that now expired.
Very good.
And that would help in the end to make better or more efficient use of available flexibility. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's the trick.
By the way, just a comment, I haven't heard anybody say the magic words local flexibility markets here that we talk so much about flexibility. So if anybody wants to elaborate on that in a second, I'm very interested to hear about it. We're going to jump to another question from Anonymous. How would you rate the role of hydrogen as a storage option compared to other technologies? Mr. Cunha.
No, I'm not an expert on hydrogen. I think, well, we are still struggling to solve the network problems, and we are already doing a lot around hydrogen. I think it's important to have this energy integration perspective. I see that clearly we can benefit from that, but I see hydrogen right now as any other tool that we should deploy. I think the toolbox wording applies to a lot of things here. It applies to this anticipatory investment is indeed a combination of different types of investment, not only assets investment, but also flexibility again for the storage. We can also think about different solutions. Hydrogen is one of that. We also have in legislation what we call network related, I don't know the wording in the clean energy package, but the possibility of DSOs and TSOs also operating storage devices. So it's also stated there. I think we need to exploit all the possibilities, as I mentioned previously, because there is no single solution for the problem. So we need to combine it in the different options.
Okay, very good. Let's jump to the third question here, which is how to motivate the industrial consumers to unlock their flexibility potential. You mentioned some of the elements before. Anybody wants to add something?
I can take it, yes. So, yeah, we believe that there is storage and demand-side flexibility can create great value for the system. That is, I think, a view that we all share. But somehow, and it is also linked to the question on remuneration, consumers also need to get the fair value of their contribution. And they need to be embarked in the energy transition. They need to also benefit from it. And some segments, and especially the industry, has suffered a lot also in the past year with the crisis that we have undergone. And I agree, not all consumers are the same, and we need to have specific policies to address also flexibility that can come from different consumer segments, which have different characteristics and can help differently. And this morning, I think Mr. Gunda also said, you can address residential flexibility and so on as well, but it's not as reliable as when you have maybe some big loads with storage and you can rely for grid safety and so on. There have been some demand-side management initiatives in the US where there are SMS signals sent to the population, or in France even last winter when we had a tense situation where we rely on grid operators, rely on voluntary help of consumers, but it cannot be the only way. It cannot secure and guarantee a system safety and security. And somehow you need to either to compensate consumers for the flexibility, and also to support reducing their energy bill through showing flexible. So in the old system, producers, they used to get compensated for this flexibility because the flexibility we had was to dispatch production differently. Why would consumers not be remunerated and get the benefits out of the flexibility that they can provide? So there is a clear stake at bringing a transparent system for remunerating those flexibilities fairly. And we see that there are three challenges. In some cases, it can really work. In the Netherlands, last month, there was huge showers, so I think within an hour, you had 6 gigawatt less solar in the system, and then the balancing prices were up, but greenhouses, they contributed to more than 1,200 megawatts to bring flexibility and could curtail their loads. They got a benefit from it, and in that case, it works, and it supported the system. So it works somehow. We need to exploit that. We see three challenges, so 3 key challenges. One is a question of trust, also between grid operators and consumers. So there is a key point to also work on that trust and consumers' participation. Then there is consumers' endorsement. It's not only about regulatory framework and incentives, but it's this change of paradigm and of behavior needs some change management at scale because industries also need to adapt and so on. And that leads to the third point, which is for industry, which also has great untapped potential. There is a key issue currently with regard to lack of visibility and long-term incentives. We cannot expect from those consumers to bring their flexibility while they have investments, and today they just don't have the visibility to develop that processes. While there is a complete merit order of flexibilities to consider. There are storages, there are batteries, you have hydrogen and so on. There is demand side, and demand side is diverse, and there are different types of demand are integrated differently in the merit order of flexibilities. But some of them are low-hanging fruits, are at low cost or really minimal costs and could be already potential use today. And then there are other processes, also industrial processes or consumption segments where there are some costs, but maybe those investment costs are lower than the costs related to developing new technologies. So we need to consider that in a more holistic manner as well, and make use of demand side while not waiting too much out of it if it's not compensated or remunerated fairly.
Thank you. We've talked a lot about flexibility today for good reasons, but flexibility is actually only one aspect of a whole series of system services that are needed to run a power system reliably and safely. And one of the things, one of the other aspects here is coming up in another question from the room that's about inertia. How do we ensure inertia in a future power system with a lot of decentral technologies where the amount of spinning mass is significantly lower? Is that something you're beginning to think about and have some answers to already?
Sure. My colleagues, they have begun to think about the future because of lack of inertia since several years. The inertia has been given by the synchronized generators till today. And we know, at least in Germany, we phase out nuclear, we phase out coal plants, and we close down the old gas power plants. But we still need the inertia for the system stability. So we have to be creative. Something like HVDC converter stations and the converters installed in the renewable in wind farms, they are able to give the inertia in the future. But we need the concept to control them and to fit it to make it fit to the system.
But can they provide a black start, for instance, another critical system service?
I think yes. I'm not the expert for that, but my colleagues are really thinking about that. Yeah.
Interesting.
But storages, they are able to build that.
Dr. Luan, I noticed, I think I read the chart right. There were many charts when your colleague presented before, but I think I saw that one thing was the energy used in 2050, another thing was the actual capacity, and where there was a lot of renewable capacity on the grid by then, there was also quite a bit of conventional capacity, I assume, to provide those critical system services. How does China think about this topic of the critical system services in a long-term future where the vast majority of energy is provided by renewables, but the system still has to work?
That's a very good question. Actually, debated quite a lot in the industry in China. Yeah. And because China, 70% generation actually is still coal-fired. But from an energy resource point of view, the government said, the expert considers, so there's no way to get rid of the coal-fired the plant. Actually, so we actually build leverage high technology that actually make the carbon emission lower than before, using scaled or kind of generations. Yeah, and the same way to build the nuclears and other distributed, even centralized PV wind generations. Yeah, and from SGC's point of view, the large power plant still there as a backup or baseline for generation as a backup. But from a kilowatt-hour point of view, energy point of view, maybe lower, give a lot to the distributed renewable generations. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Dr. Groebel, this is a well-known conundrum also from the European energy policy debate. There is let's say, there's a technological dimension to this, but there's also very much a business model dimension to this and a regulatory model. How is it that we keep, let's say, assets on the grid that are able to provide those critical system services if all the energy is de facto delivered by other technologies, so they stand around most of the time? Long story short, what's the CEER view on capacity remuneration mechanisms, which could also help the business case for other types of flexible assets?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have commented during the EMD consultation, basically arguing that we agree with the Commission's approach that the electricity market design on the short term works well. I think that is pretty much common sense now, but that we also agree that it is useful to strengthen the longer end of the market, so to speak, like with PPAs, etc., exactly for the reasons that you mentioned.
So PPAs, but not necessarily capacity mechanisms.
Yeah, and not necessarily standardized PPAs, because this is maybe a contradiction in terms.
Right, I'll just leave that comment as okay. Standing right there. Let's see if there's one more and one last question from the room. How unfit for purpose are today's grids for the future, and how quick can they get fit?
How often, sir?
How unfit are today's grids? Mr. Cunha?
It's a very good question. I think the numbers are there. So if we look to the quality of service, they are fit for purpose. I mean, they are reacting well. And Europe is a use case, a successful use case integrating renewables. The phase now is looking into lower voltage levels, understanding what will be the impact. The things that we normally don't talk at European level, which is voltage quality, network losses that are increasing a lot. Even this topic that you mentioned, inertia, I think the fact that we also need to take care of standards. We didn't speak about standards, but it's very easy if you confront the assets that you use here in Germany with the ones that we use in southern part of Europe, or even in the eastern part of Europe. We use different kinds of assets. So if you want to revamp the European industry, it's also important that we look at that aspect. So from that perspective, I would say that we are okay. The networks are good. We are benefit from that. But I think we should not waste more time thinking about how good they are. It's important is how good they will be in the future. That is the point. So that is the big question mark for me.
Do you want to make a quick remark on my question from before about the local flexibility markets? How do you see their role or potential role in providing?
I think we have developed one report maybe in 2018 about flexibility, and we consider that flexibility is again a matter of a toolbox. So we agree on dynamic contracts. We agree on flexibility markets. We agree on almost everything, as long as it is useful and cost-effective and cost-efficient. I think that is the main principle. We need to acknowledge also that grids need to cooperate with the edge, so that the flexibility can be a reality. We have very good examples of that. We are implementing a lot of solutions, so very happy to share whenever we want.
Thank you very much. We're coming to the end of this session, and you are all dying to have a cup of coffee, I'm sure. I think this was a very rich debate. It would probably take too long for me to try to sum it all up. I'll just make a couple of closing remarks. Existing grids, ladies and gentlemen, are absolutely critical. The question is how we make the best use of these existing grids. New investments in grids, I think there can be no doubt after this discussion that new investments are also needed, but it's all about making intelligent use of what we have and making sure that we don't increase the bill of the energy transition too much, because this will become quite pricey in any case. So use the flexible solutions where they are, use the flexibility potentials where they come from EVs, from smart demand-side response solutions. Let's develop those, incentivize those, allow those in some cases, provide them access to the balancing markets, allow for the aggregation to happen. We heard some very good, clear examples of what can be done in order to facilitate and increase, let's say, the incentives for DSR. We also heard about concrete standards that are needed for instance, flexible and virtual power plants. We heard about the need for anticipatory investments, different views on this topic. We heard about the critical role of planning and not least technology, different technology aspects across the value chain that are needed to solve the flexibility equation of a largely renewably driven power system. Ladies and gentlemen, could you help me in giving a big hand to this distinguished panel? Thank you very much. And before you get up and get your coffee, we need to give the word to Asami Miketa, who also gave a presentation in the beginning, for a couple of closing words from the IRENA Secretariat. But I think the panel can now go off stage this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kristian, for giving a very good summary. And also, I would like to thank all the panelists for the great discussion. I would also like to thank for all the scene-setting presenters. I found that the discussion at this technical panel had a lot to resonate with the morning session of the high-level policymaker panel. So that is a very good, promising sign. I would like to say a special thanks to our co-organizer of the session, CEPRI, particularly Chairperson, Dr. Lee, Dr. Yon and Dr. Lee, and all the colleagues from the CEPRI. We are very grateful for the long-standing cooperation with CEPRI and State Grid Corporation. I mentioned in the presentation that the Chinese translated version is going to be published. Actually, that was just published half an hour ago, so you can now check on the internet. I also would like to say that IRENA has been convening this Innovation Week. This is the fourth time. We are happy to bring everyone together to facilitate the conversation, but it's also very important for us that we collect all the discussion and use it as an input for our ongoing work. Just to give an example, immediately we are going to collect these inputs and use it as our inputs for the COP28. So also I would like to hear from everyone from the audience. If any members of the audience have any experience to share, please reach out to IRENA staff. And also you will have opportunity to hear from the authors of this Innovation Landscape Report. Starting the next session, you will hear from the authors of the mobility session and authors of the heat and cooling session. So with that, I would like to thank everyone, and I hope that you enjoy the coffee. Should I give it to you now? Okay, thank you.